When I was 17 years old, I asked my Amish mother a question that made her drop the plate she was holding. It shattered on the floor. She didn't even look at it. She just stared at me with this expression I had never seen before. Not anger, not exactly. It was fear. She said, "Sarah, that is not something we speak about. God decides these things." Then she bent down, picked up the broken pieces with shaking hands, and never mentioned it again. I had asked her if there was any way for a woman to stop having babies. That question lived inside me for years, and what I eventually discovered, what almost nobody outside the Amish community realizes, is that my mother did know the answer. She just wasn't allowed to say it. I grew up in a Schwarzentroober Amish community in Ohio. That's one of the most conservative orders. No indoor plumbing, no electricity, horse and buggy only. Dresses fastened with straight pins instead of buttons. And when it came to the topic of birth control, the official position was simple: silence, complete and total silence. But the unofficial reality? That's a different world entirely. A world I didn't understand until years after I left. And I'm going to tell you all of it. Let me take you back to when I was 12 years old. I was helping my Aunt Esther with her laundry. She had 7 children at the time, and I remember watching her move and thinking she looked like a woman twice her age. Her back was curved, her hands shook a little. She was 34. We were hanging sheets on the line, and she looked at the house to make sure no one was near the windows. Then she leaned toward me and spoke so quietly I almost couldn't hear her. "There are ways to have some space between the babies, you know. You just have to pay attention to your body." I opened my mouth to ask what she meant, and she cut me off immediately. "Don't ever ask me about this again." That was it. One sentence, over wet sheets on a clothesline, and she never brought it up again for the rest of her life. But that single sentence told me something was happening beneath the surface. Something women knew but never said out loud. Now here's what most outsiders don't understand. The Amish are not one single group. There are dozens of different affiliations. Schwarzentroober, Old Order, New Order, Andy Weaver, Beachy. Each one has slightly different unwritten rules. And on the topic of birth control, what is unthinkable in one community is quietly tolerated in another. In the most conservative districts, modern birth control is forbidden. Period. No pills, no IUDs, no condoms, nothing. The official teaching is that children are a direct blessing from God, not a metaphor, not symbolic, a literal blessing. And to interfere with that process is to reject God's will. But that's the official teaching. And then there's what actually happens. My cousin Miriam was married at 21. By 25, she had 4 children. After the 4th, she almost died in childbirth. The midwife told her husband that another pregnancy could kill her, so what did they do? They didn't stop being husband and wife. They didn't take any pills. Instead, Miriam started tracking her cycle. She marked the days in an old recipe book because no one would ever think to look in a recipe book. When her mother-in-law visited, she could leave it on the kitchen counter and no one would glance twice at it. It was invisible, hiding in plain sight. This is called the rhythm method, or natural family planning, and it exists in this strange gray area in Amish life. It's never discussed from the pulpit. No bishop will ever say it's permitted. But within the private world of women, the knowledge is passed from mother to daughter, from sister to sister, in whispers and half sentences. But not everyone has a recipe book, and not everyone can rely on the rhythm method. So let me tell you what happens when an Amish woman needs something more. I want to tell you about a woman I'll call Ruth. That's not her real name. Ruth is still Amish, still in the community, and if anyone there knew I was telling her story, her life would fall apart. Ruth had 6 children. Her body was breaking down. Her pelvic floor was so damaged she couldn't stand for more than 10 minutes without pain. She had severe anemia. Her teeth were loose because the pregnancies had leached calcium from her bones. Her husband watched her suffer and he couldn't bear it anymore. So they made a decision together. Ruth had a friend outside the community, an English woman she knew from the farmer's market where she sold baked goods. One day Ruth handed this friend a note. It just said, "I need help. Can you take me to a doctor?" The friend said yes. They drove 2 hours to a clinic in another county where no one would recognize an Amish woman. Ruth used cash she had saved for 6 months, small amounts hidden in a jar buried in the garden because Amish women typically don't have their own bank accounts. She paid for the appointment in full. The doctor gave her a prescription for birth control pills. On the drive home, Ruth sat in the passenger seat and cried. Not from relief, from terror. Because now she had to hide something that, if discovered, could get her shunned by her entire community. Let me explain what shunning means. It means no one in the community is allowed to eat with you. No one can do business with you. Your own parents won't sit at the same table. Your children are taught that you are spiritually dead. This is what Ruth was risking. She wrapped the pills in an old sock and hid them at the bottom of her sewing basket. Every few days, she moved them, sometimes to the back of a drawer, sometimes inside a winter boot, sometimes underneath a loose floorboard in the bedroom. She lived in constant fear that her mother-in-law or one of her daughters would find them. This went on for years. Now you might be wondering how Amish women even know about birth control in the first place. In the strictest communities, they often don't. Young women go into marriage without understanding how pregnancy happens in any biological sense. There is no sex education in Amish schools. Many parents never discuss it at all. The prevailing belief is that such knowledge leads to temptation and sin. When I got married, I didn't understand ovulation. I didn't know what a menstrual cycle really meant. I had been told that babies came when God decided a married couple should have them. That was the entirety of my education. But knowledge still finds a way in. Amish women who work at market stands hear things from English customers. They see magazine covers at the grocery store. In some communities, there's a radio hidden in the barn, which is technically forbidden but happens far more than anyone admits. Information travels slowly, but it does travel. And then there are the herbal remedies. This is a whole hidden world that most outsiders know nothing about. There are older women in every Amish community who know about herbs. Certain plants have been used for centuries to prevent pregnancy or to bring on a late cycle. Pennyroyal, black cohosh, blue cohosh. These names are spoken in whispers. A young Amish woman who needs help might go to one of these older women. She might be given a tea or a tincture, all without anyone saying directly what it's for. The code of silence around this is absolute. But here's what I need you to understand. These herbs are dangerous. They can cause liver damage, kidney failure, and even death. They are not safe. They are not regulated. They are used because they exist in a gray zone between medicine and folk tradition, and because they don't require a doctor or a pharmacy or anything that would leave a trail. I knew a woman who nearly died from taking pennyroyal tea. She was 23 years old. She survived, barely, but she never told anyone what had happened. Not her husband, not her mother, no one. She carried that secret alone. Now I have to talk about something even more hidden, something that exists in the deepest shadows of Amish life: abortion. The official Amish position on abortion is almost universally opposed. It is considered a grave sin, the taking of a life created by God. And yet Amish women do have abortions. It is rare. It is secret beyond anything I can describe. But it happens. An Amish woman seeking an abortion faces impossible obstacles. She has no money of her own, no transportation, no one she can ask for help without risking total destruction of her life. If she has an English friend, she might reach out. Otherwise, she is entirely alone. I know of a woman who traveled 5 hours to a clinic in another state. She used money she had saved by skimming small amounts from the household grocery budget for over a year. She was accompanied by a single non-Amish friend who picked her up at a crossroads at 4 in the morning. They drove through the darkness. She had the procedure. And then she came home and acted like nothing had happened. She never told her husband. She never told anyone. She will take that secret to her grave. These stories are not mine to tell in detail. They belong to the women who lived them. But I'm telling you they exist because the image of Amish life as simple and uncomplicated is a lie. Real life is happening behind those white curtains and tidy gardens. Pain and desperation and impossible choices. Let me talk about something else now. The physical cost. An average Amish woman will give birth to between 6 and 8 children over her lifetime. Some have many more. My own grandmother had 14 pregnancies, 14 births. She was pregnant or nursing for essentially 20 straight years. Each pregnancy carries risk, and those risks are amplified in communities where medical care is often accessed late or reluctantly. Amish women typically give birth at home with midwives or in birthing centers run by non-Amish midwives who understand their needs. Hospital births happen, but usually only when something has already gone wrong. I watched my own mother suffer. She had a condition called diastasis recti, which is a separation of the abdominal muscles. It never healed properly because she was pregnant again before her body could recover. She had chronic anemia, pelvic floor dysfunction, back problems that got worse every year, and a level of exhaustion that I can only describe as soul deep. She never complained, not one single time, because that was what a good Amish woman did. She bore her cross in silence. There's a couple I knew who stopped being intimate with each other entirely after their 8th child. Not because they didn't love each other, they did, deeply. But the wife could not survive another pregnancy, and this was the only solution that didn't violate church teaching. They lived as roommates for 30 years, in the same house, raising their children together, loving each other, but never touching, because that was the choice their faith gave them. That breaks my heart. It still breaks my heart. To choose between physical intimacy with your spouse and your own survival. That's not a choice anyone should have to make. And yet, in these communities, it's happening silently, in homes up and down the country roads, and no one talks about it. The thing I want you to understand is that Amish women are not passive. They are not naive. They are navigating an incredibly restrictive system with creativity and intelligence and strength that most outsiders will never witness. The real question isn't, can Amish women use birth control? The real question is how women survive and make choices within a system that officially denies them any choice at all. And the answer is that they do it the same way women always have, in every culture and every time period. Carefully, secretly, and together. My own decision to leave the Amish was not directly about birth control, but it was connected to the larger question of bodily autonomy. I wanted to make decisions about my own life. I wanted to understand my own body. I wanted to choose if and when I had children. Those desires were fundamentally incompatible with remaining Amish. Since leaving, I've had access to healthcare and information that my mother and grandmothers never had. And I carry that freedom with a strange mixture of gratitude and grief. Gratitude for what I have now, and grief for the women who are still there, still making impossible choices behind closed doors, still hiding pills in sewing baskets, still marking secret calendars in recipe books, still whispering half sentences over clotheslines and then never speaking of it again. I still visit my family in the community. We sit at the kitchen table and drink coffee and talk about the weather and the garden and who's getting married. And sometimes I look at my cousins, women my age with 6 children and bodies worn down by constant childbearing, and I wonder what they would say if they knew I was out here talking about this openly. Would they be angry, embarrassed, or would they secretly be grateful that someone is finally saying what they've never been allowed to say? The biggest Amish secret isn't that birth control exists. The biggest secret is that thousands of women have spent generations pretending it doesn't, and the silence continues. I'm Sarah. I used to be Amish, and if you have questions about this life that you've always wondered about, leave them in the comments. I read every single one. Thank you for listening.